and welcome to today's video about successful action planning. In our transfer of learning process, turning learning into action, we have three discrete stages: preparation, action and evaluation. And action planning is at the very heart of the preparation stage. So today that's what we're going to be focusing on. And we'll be talking about what you can do to make sure the action planning you do with your participants effectively supports their learning transfer. So the action plan is the stage where you have your participants collect their commitments for what they're going to put in place. It's where they reflect on what they learn and they create a plan for what they're going to take away. Now intellectually, I'm sure most learning and development professionals or trainers could tell you what comprises of a really good action planning session. Why is it then when I go to training programs that I see action planning being done very badly? Let's take a moment to think about the three key challenges when action planning in a learning environment. So the three key challenges to action planning are lack of time, lack of focus, and lack of energy. Thankfully though, these challenges can be overcome. Let's look at them each though so we can be really clear as to what we mean and what the challenge looks like. So in terms of lack of time, often in a training program there's too much content. Or you fall into the trap of thinking, if I just add this one little piece more of content, I'm going to be adding additional value. The challenge is by the time you get to the end of the program, it's not the content that's adding additional value, it's the action planning that will make a difference to the transfer. So looking at lack of time, people often run out of time towards the end of the training program, maybe because they've got too much content, or maybe because activities overran, and we get caught in the trap of being short of time, so the thing that gets axed is the action plan, or the things that has its timing cut is the action plan. But the action plan is what's going to make the difference back in the real world for transfer of learning. So timing can be a real issue. So the second challenge, lack of focus, is that the focus is often more on the content than the action planning. The trainer or the facilitator is very across the content, they love the content, they know the content is great, and that focus remains with the content. And action planning, because it's something that they don't have control of when the person goes back to the workplace, just never becomes a real focus at any point in time. But of course, no matter how great the program is, if the learning doesn't transfer, then you don't get the value. So in my mind, there needs to be even more focus on the action planning than the content. And the third and final challenge is lack of energy. This is an interesting one. Often when I see action planning processes put into place, because it's a solitary process that the participant maybe does on their own or perhaps in pairs, when the process is set up, I often then see the facilitator or the trainer actually leave the room, or they get busy preparing for the final part of the program or getting the evaluation forms ready, and they don't remain present with the participants while they're actually action planning. Now in my mind, even though it's a solitary process, when we're working with people on action planning, we're actually walking around the room, we're checking in that people are able to come up with their action plan, and we remain really present with the process. And I think the energy needs to be on this so that the participants realise the importance of it. So if those are the challenges, what can we effectively do about it? Well, the first thing is to make sure you prioritise the action planning. Give it time, ample time, and stick to that. I think at least 30 minutes to 1 hour is required at the end of a training process. Now obviously it depends whether it's been a 4-day program or a 1-day program, but the absolute minimum I think is 30 minutes to have a good action planning process, preferably an hour. And when you set that time on the agenda, stick to it. Secondly, you can ensure that there's a distribution plan for the action plans. It's amazing how much more attention someone gives to the action plans when they know they're going to be distributed to the managers of the participants. So make sure you have a process that they can be collated and distributed. So the third thing you can do is change the energy around the action planning process. So be present, as I was mentioning before, but also ensure that you change the energy in the room by maybe putting the chairs in a semicircle rather than having them behind the desks, or change the type of music that you're using to accompany the action planning. Anything to make it a little bit different from the content pieces. Also, in terms of the energy, really make it clear that this is the start of the next stage of the process, rather than having it at the very end of the training process. Often at the end of a training program, people are tired, they're checking their watches, they're thinking about getting their flight home. But really, you need to override this by making it the start of a new process and setting their sights on what they're going to do when they're returning from the program. So the fourth thing you can do is to use a capture sheet. So a capture sheet is a one-page that you specifically give to the participants at the beginning of the program. You might want to make it maybe a yellow coloured piece of paper or something that will stand out. And they use this sheet and bring it out any time that there's something that's either an aha moment for them, or something they think is going to be really relevant, or something that's particularly useful, and they capture their ideas for implementation on that sheet as they go throughout. So using a capture sheet really helps the action planning process, because when it comes to creating the action plan, they go back to their capture sheet and they pull the information from there of what they're actually going to use. So the fifth thing you can do to make your action plans really successful for your participants is to make them useful, not onerous. So make sure that what you're collecting in the action plan is going to be really helpful in terms of behavioural change. Now you can actually download a copy of one of our action plans from our website, leverlearning.com. Just go to the resources section. Let me give you an overview now though of how we make our action plans useful and not onerous. So as an overview for our action plans, we have a 3x5 matrix. So we're suggesting that people put in place 3 specific things that they want to take away and to use and implement back in the workplace. And across the top we have the 5 different columns of what specifically is it that you're going to implement. Why is that important to you? What is success going to look like? So what might you see people doing around you? What might you hear people saying? How might you feel when you put this into place? Calibrate the scale on a scale of 0 to 10 where they are on that particular item at the moment. So generally the calibration is quite low, particularly if it's something that's new to them. And finally we get them to confirm the next step. So what are they going to do within the next 48 hours after they've left the learning event to gain the momentum around this implementation action? So that's the 5x3 matrix. I think most of those things people will have come up with anyway. I think the why is particularly important because it gets people to focus on why is that it's important to them. What does it mean to them and why is that important? So they're really drilling down to their own motivations. And I think calibration is important because we use that throughout the reflection process, having people where they are now, a scale of 0 to 10, where they want to get to on a scale of 0 to 10, and describing the difference. That's our way of capturing the specifics behind the action. So hopefully that insight into the action plan is useful to you, but please know that once again you can download a copy from our website. So to summarise, the 5 things that you can do to make sure your action planning is really successful. Firstly, prioritise the action planning. Secondly, make sure that they're going to be distributed. Thirdly, change your energy and focus around the action planning. Fourthly, use a capture sheet. And fifthly, make sure that they're useful rather than onerous. Hopefully today's video has been useful, helping you think about action planning. What are the main challenges, what you can do to overcome those, and some of the content of the action plan itself. Do stop by the website. Love to hear how you're going with your action planning, and good luck with it.